These are all the buyouts for all the Big Ten coaches as it stands right now. Now, things will change after December 1st, but I think if we're talking about right now, the coaches that could possibly be fired, maybe like now or within the next few weeks or something like that, there are some buyouts here that I think definitely make that possible. I'm going to take the easiest one really fast just so that way I can be right. Ryan Walters. You
Get
are
him out of here.
like you're out, not safe, whatever. Like the hardest like umpire out I can possibly do. This is not going to go well for Ryan Walters. That's my first pick on hot seat, and I can almost guarantee he's going to be fired here in the next few weeks.
The question really is why wasn't he fired like after Notre Dame?
I'm wondering if they just want to get through like this Ohio State game and the other games they feel like they're just going to get absolutely blown out and just use
That's
that as
fair.
like, you
That's
know,
fair.
oh yeah, he's getting fired.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, Ryan Walters. So
Oh, I apologize. If you're on podcast, Ryan Walters' buyout is $9.6 million. That is the second lowest in the Big Ten that we know of. We don't know of USC's and we don't know Northwestern's because those are
yeah,
private universities. Sorry,
we
Zach. Go ahead.
but we do know that USC's is astronomically large.
I've heard somewhere between 85 and 90 million.
Yeah. That being said, Lincoln Riley's my number two. I had Ryan Walters number one,
You
and
think they're going to
here's
fire him before the end of the year or in the offseason or what?
I don't know. Well, this is a hot seat conversation, and I think part of my problem is I'm like I don't know if any of the other coaches are in dire straits. Like Lincoln Riley is at a bit of a crossroads because he might not make a bowl game this year. And that's why I was like, I don't know if he's desperate with the quarterback change to save his job. I do think he's desperate to rescue his reputation. Cause like this is not a James Franklin or a Ryan Day conversation. Like people are upset at James Franklin because he can't beat Ohio State. Well, guess what? Almost nobody beats Ohio State. Ryan Day is like people are upset at Ryan Day because he can't beat Michigan and loses to top 5 teams. Well, guess what? A lot of people don't beat top 5 teams. Lincoln Riley was supposed to be the savior for USC to get them back to the national championship picture. He went 8-5 with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback a year ago, and now he's 4-5, losing to phenomenal teams and programs like Minnesota. No offense to Minnesota, they're good, but like
But they should have won that
USC,
game, right? Like if you are
yeah,
USC, what USC is full powered. No disrespect to Minnesota, but if USC is full powered and what they are supposed to be, they're supposed to win that game, even with it being at Minnesota.
right.
Like
So they lost to Minnesota. They lost to the powerhouse known as Maryland in October. By the way, I mean, they lost to Washington. Granted, at Washington, but it's like, man, they're losing to all these teams. Like, if you told me they were 4-5 with a win over LSU, mind you, maybe the best team they've played aside from Penn State, like I don't know how you defend the past 2 years for Lincoln Riley.
you can't. I mean, he already used this card of firing the coordinator,
Yep.
like, and he comes back this year and he has the turmoil with the quarterbacks. It looks like he's possibly going to get Will Howard. That doesn't happen. Will Howard goes to Ohio State instead. They don't bring in a transfer portal quarterback, or I guess they did bring in Maava, but they did not bring in a starting transfer portal quarterback. They lost the 5-star quarterback. What was his name? He went to Boise State. Looks like he didn't do anything with him because he couldn't even win the job at Boise State. So, what in the world was Lincoln Riley doing with that quarterback? Like,
Yep.
you have all, like, he is still living off the reputation of Baker Mayfield, walk on quarterback, won the Heisman. He's still living off of that.
Yep.
It's not good enough. Like, you did that in the Big 12. Congratulations. The Big 12
Yep.
is not good, and it wasn't good back then either.
Yep.
And that's why every single time he got to the playoffs, he got blown out because he had a super high powered offense that had a really good quarterback in the Big 12. Well, guess what? You get to the Big 10, there are actually defenses in the Big 10. Minnesota has a defense, right? I
Yep.
mean, all these teams that USC is losing to, they have defenses. It's very possible here in a couple weeks they lose to they lose to Nebraska because Nebraska has a defense. Now it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens with Mayava, but I mean,
Mhm.
like, if you're Lincoln Riley, you have to play bad defenses in order to win. In the Pac-12
Yep.
last year, the defenses got a lot better, and that's one of the reasons why they struggled,
Yep.
right? The year before that, the defenses weren't all that good. Who did they lose to in the title game? Utah, one of
Mhm.
the only teams in the Pac-12 that year that had a good
Actually
defense,
played defense. Yeah.
right? Like, granted, I know Caleb Williams got hurt in that title game, but still, like, eh, Lincoln Riley has been hiding amongst bad defenses for a long time and get into games where he can kind of go off with the points. But you're in the Big Ten now.
Mhm.
You can't hide around bad defense. There's too many good defenses
Yeah.
around, and I don't know if they fire him this year. But if they are going to fire him next year, the buyout is still going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's still going to be 70, 80 million. So the thought process I have there with that is like, if you don't think he's the guy, you might as well fire him now because
Yep.
it's still going to be super expensive next year.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think the fear is like, well, what are we going to do without that money? It's like you start from the ground, like you rebuild the foundation.
Right.
Like so you get a guy who you want to be a culture guy.
Right.
Similar to another guy on my list, but like I think what Nebraska's trying to do with Matt Rule, which I'm sure we'll get to Matt Rule in a bit, but like I just Lincoln Riley's not the guy. Like he's not who we thought he was. Like I thought I was saying earlier in the season, give him patience, like be patient with him. But this dude's not it. And I think he was I think to your point, he hid behind a weak Big 12 and a weak Pac 12 in 2021 or 2022.
2021.
Yeah.
Because it got
And
stronger in 2022 when they had Washington and Oregon. And
yeah. Yeah. And like now he's exposed in a conference and he hasn't even played like the three best teams in the Big Ten. He
right.
hasn't played Indiana. He hasn't played Oregon. He hasn't played Ohio State.
I think honestly what is more likely to happen with Lincoln Riley is honestly Lincoln Riley takes some kind of NFL job, whether that's a quarterback coach or an analyst or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
where he gets out because I think like for Lincoln Riley, he has a lot of stuff he wants to get done. I still remember Big Ten media days, him being so cocky, so arrogant, and talking about all the stuff he wanted to do. I mean, he was talking about getting rid of the Notre Dame game off USC schedule. Like, you're not doing that if you're not a successful coach at USC. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to do that stuff. And the pressure is just going to mount and mount and mount. I, if he doesn't get fired, I actually think it's probably more likely USC is like, let us help you go somewhere else
Yep.
and we won't charge them the buyout of
Yeah.
hiring you away for a quarterback job because we just want to move on from you. We want to bring Lane Kiffin here. We want to bring somebody else.
Yeah.
We want to bring Kirk Signetti here. It would never
Yeah.
happen, but you know we want to bring somebody else here
Yeah.
because you're just quite frankly not good enough.
Yeah.
All right, couple questions, and then we'll get to the next head coach on the hot seat. Derby says Lincoln Riley, I thought, had USC on the right track. I mean, after the first year, you thought so, right?
Yep.
They had won what 4 or 5 games the year before, and then he won 13 or 12 with them,
Mm-hmm.
11 or 12. Like it was a massive improvement. You thought so, but like I said,
Yep.
he was hiding behind some bad defenses. Philip says, "Who's Signetti gonna take, or who's gonna take a run at Signetti and make him say no?"
Hmm.
I don't know, Zach.
Yeah.
USC, I mentioned them. I don't think Signetti would go to USC.
No.
He wouldn't
I
go to Purdue. Purdue's not. Purdue's not any better than Indiana.
No.
Indiana, I would argue, is a better job than Purdue.
I would. I think Signetti would have to go. Like, if he was going to leave for somewhere, he'd have to go somewhere that a national championship opportunity is like there for the taking in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there's a job like that right now. Like, everybody's talking about Florida and Auburn.
Yeah, Florida's probably your best bet.
Yeah.
I
Like
mean, he
Florida
knows
with
the South, but
Florida with DJ Lagway, like,
yeah,
could be, but I don't know if they're going to get rid of Napier the way that they're starting to
yeah,
rebound a bit.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I think we're gonna have to see what jobs open up first, but I also think IU's gonna do everything they can to not let him go.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
they're
I
gonna do
agree.
everything they can.
I agree.
Um, Cameron says if they are having issues raising NIL funds like USC has started, I don't know when or how they're going to fire him. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and that's why I'm saying like maybe there's a conversation behind closed doors. It's like, dude, you don't want to coach here. We don't want you coaching here. Like,
Yep.
just go to the NFL and get some kind of job with a quarterback or something like that. And just let's part ways mutually here.
Yeah.
All right, my next one, Zach, and then we'll see if you have another one after that. We did have somebody ask about Luke Fickell. I lost that comment. I apologize. I think Luke Fickell. I don't think he gets fired after this year, especially with a $40 million buyout.
Yeah. I was gonna say before you say, I have two guys like Ryan Walters and Lincoln Riley are my two where I'm like, they're I would Ryan Walters definitely and Lincoln Riley potentially this
Yeah.
year. Those are my only two. But I have a lot of like if things go bad. Like
Yeah, my
if it
other
gets bad.
one, if things go bad, is Maryland, where they need to win at least 3 more games this season. They're 4-4
That ain't
right
happening.
now, and yeah, their final games are at Oregon, Rutgers, Iowa, Penn State. Penn State.
Do you
It's not
do you
happening.
do you
You
think
see
they would
one win there, maybe.
do you think they would fire Locksley this year though?
I think so. That buyout is only 17 million. He's bringing in talent, but he's not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
Like, and I think if you're Maryland, you're like, why are we afraid of losing our talent if this guy brings in talent, but he doesn't do anything with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to justify it at some point and say, like, I know the schedule was pretty tough for him here at the end of the year, but I mean, they should have beat Northwestern. They should have beat Michigan State.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I
they
just
would be 6-4, 6-2 right now if they did.
Yeah. I just think, and Cameron hits my thought kind of right on the nose. Every Maryland fan I talk to loves Locksley. And like they are very quick to defend him, which I just find odd because I'm like, don't you want more? But like, I'm not sure they do. Like, from 2021 to 2023, every time I criticized Locksley, and like literally every time, they'd be like, he's improved every year. He's improved the record. He wins bowl games. He's recruiting well and he's developing players. And I'm like, I don't agree with you.
I mean,
But
he is recruiting well. Like, he's getting talent in there. But that's my thing is like they improve one more win and kind of like and if you are crediting a coach with winning bowl games as like some big accomplishment today of why you should keep him around, I'm sorry, you don't understand football. Like, you don't understand the way football is played anymore. Bowl games are not an accomplishment that keeps a team or keeps a coach around anymore. Because they just don't mean as much as they once did. I've heard some Maryland fans seem like they're happy with him, but I've also heard Maryland fans that are just like, we're never going to do anything with this guy. We have a good recruiting base in the DMV. We, joined the Big Ten thinking that this was a more premier basketball conference. And what have we done since we got here? Nothing.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, Maryland is a program that honestly, like, even in the new Big Ten, they should probably be in the top 5 every 4 or 5 years at the very least with how you can recruit.
Yeah.
Like, the DMV has a lot of talent,
Yep.
especially with the ACC being down right now and you being the premier one over there on the coast. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's you and Rutgers,
Yep.
and Rutgers is further away. So yeah. Um. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Locksley. I guess that we could see him maybe fired after December 1st if maybe the buyout gets substantially lower. I don't know what it is after December 1st, but
Yeah.
yeah. Did you have another
I
one?
well, I was gonna say so. Locksley was 8 for me.
He was eighth.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, who's your third then?
Which I that's not my personal feeling, by the way. That was just thinking. I don't know if Maryland actually wants to get rid of him, but
Yeah,
my number 3, and I don't think this will happen, is James Franklin.
yeah. The
Like,
buyout's just so big, man.
yeah. Well, and it's like Lincoln Riley, I feel like actually gives a lot of perspective to James Franklin and Ryan Day.
Yeah,
Because it's like USC was relevant even, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years. I forget when they were most relevant nationally, but like it wasn't that long ago. And they've gotten the big name coach and they suck.
yeah,
Like, so do you really want to go down the road of getting rid of James Franklin when his biggest failure is to not beat a top 5 team that has been running the conference except for the past 3 years? Like I just so I don't think he's actually on the hot seat, but like he would be my number 3. I ranked the top 9 hot seat coaches. Do you want me to go through that list real
sure.
quick?
Just give you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I had Ryan Walters, Lincoln Riley, James Franklin, Fickle, because I haven't seen much improvement there. Matt
Are you are
Rule,
you are you taking in buyout or are you just going straight job?
yeah,
Not
but buyout in years.
okay. Sorry, I interrupted. Good.
So Luke Fickle, again, I think he's safe because of both buyout and years, but I think his seat's starting to get warm.
Next year, yeah.
Yeah, Matt Rule is the same way. Like I think
Hmm.
he's safe because of the buyout and because of it's only year 2, but
But you have to make a bowl game this year.
yeah, if you don't make a bowl game, there is a concern that you don't make it to year 3.
I think he still makes it to year 3 because this is a fan base that's been through a lot, and that buyout is huge. It's about the
Yeah.
same as Franklin's, um,
I
but
I would
I think it's really contentious in year 3, and I think the fans are not nearly as much behind him as maybe they once were.
yeah.
And I think Dylan Raiola helps as well too. If he keeps Dylan Raiola and he doesn't transfer away, I think that helps too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd put it like 60, 65, 35 that he'd be on for year 3. But
Yeah,
it get dicey. Um so 5 I'm at Rule. 6 I've Ryan Day just because I think if they don't beat Michigan, like I think
he has to win the national championship if they don't beat Michigan.
yeah, like it's like that is almost an automatic fireable offense in
Yeah,
Columbus at this point. 7 I have Sharon Moore, and the buyout is a big part of it, and the fact that they have looked awful in their coach. If they don't make a bowl game, which is possible, it's on the
yeah.
table.
He still has the fire the coordinators excuse, and the way
Yeah,
with how recruiting is going, he still has that excuse. I think Sharon Moore is safe for at least one more year, if
yep,
not two,
yeah,
because of the recruiting. And I think he fires both of his coordinators this year
yep,
and finds somebody else. I don't think it's going to get any better. I mean,
yeah,
it might get a little better, but I don't think it's going to be much better.
yep,
But yeah, go ahead.
yeah. And
Sorry.
I agree. Well, that's why I have him 7th. I don't actually
Right.
think he's in danger, but I have Locksley 8th, and a big reason. Like I think all of your reasons reasonably, like fire him yesterday. I don't think Maryland cares enough to do so. And then
Well, and
number
actually, Philip brings up a good point. If they're trying to fire their basketball coach at the same time, that's 2 buyouts to pay, especially going into this revenue sharing era where money is going to be coming from the athletic department to pay these players. Like, I actually heard a really good thought the other. Actually, do your ninth one really fast, and then we'll talk about that.
yeah, ninth is Shiano. I think the way that this season has gotten away from him a little bit.
Yeah,
Again, he's ninth. I don't actually think he's going anywhere, but buyout's not super high. I think the expectations were super high, and
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Um, All right, so I heard somebody talking about this the other day. They were talking about how revenue sharing is coming into college football now, and they actually thought you were going to see a lot less firings nowadays because of the
Mm,
buyouts and how much they cost and how people were operating contracts under the old way where you didn't have to pay money out of the athletic department. And so their thought process is we're actually going to see a record number of non-firings of head coaches here in the next 2 or 3 years because the buyouts are going to be
interesting.
so big, and some of these buyouts are going to be more than the $20 million they can put toward players.
Mm,
And the thought process is like, well, this is going to be like the NFL, where like a lot of these teams realize maybe our coach isn't all that great, but we need
mm,
talent and we need
yeah.
to save money for that talent. And if you fire a head coach with a $50 million buyout, part of that is cutting into your,
Your
revenue
NIL.
sharing, NIL, whatever you want to call it, paying players budget. And so, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with this discussion is like, I really do feel like the only two like big talking points for to be fired are, what do we say? Purdue, and who was the other second one we said? James Franklin?
No, Lincoln Riley.
Oh, Lincoln Riley. Yeah. Sorry. But even Lincoln Riley, I'm like, that's
No.
why I think it's more like hey, let's mutually agree to leave here. We want to fire you, but we don't want to do that because we don't want to pay you so much of a buyout that we can't pay to bring in players. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
so I look at it and I'm like, honestly, I don't think we see any more than two coaches being fired this year from the Big Ten at most, maybe only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Do you? I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that makes sense, or do you have a
Oh
different
yeah, yeah,
thought?
yeah. I no, I don't think. Yeah, I think everyone else. I think the money piece is so important because it'd be the thing that would keep USC from firing Lincoln
Right.
is like, how do we keep our roster? I wonder if for USC it's a matter of how do we stop the bleeding and rebuild.
Right.
And sometimes that means you got to cut. Sometimes that means you have to implode something to rebuild it. And I actually wonder if USC needs something like that because I, there was a part of me that thought that what they're going through could happen, but there's no with their roster, there's no reason why it should be this.
Yeah.
If Lincoln Riley is who he was supposed to be, there's no reason why they should be this bad. But they're not good.
Yeah. I mean, it just comes down to they can't win games at the end of the game.
Yeah.
They're there, and all of them, like we said, the
Yeah.
numbers love them because they're right there. But
Yeah. I do it's interesting too. I just one more thought to what you're saying about the revenue sharing. I do think that's a great equalizer in the sport, which I think the sport desperately needs because it still doesn't limit the wild west nature of things, which I wish that would change.
right.
But this is a start because you have to manage the amount of money that you are sharing now with the coach as well as the players, and that's going to limit your ability to just go hog wild on players with reckless abandon. Like you
Yeah.
actually are going to have some restraint because you also got to pay the coaching staff. So
And the other or go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were done.
I just think that's helpful.
Yeah. The other part of this too is I think a lot of people don't realize how these athletic departments are going to operate. These athletic directors were not made to be general managers. These
Mhm.
athletic directors were not hired to do that job. What's probably going to happen is we are probably going to see coaches hire general manager type people in their program, and that's going to make it even harder to fire some of these coaches is because the one who's kind of managing the program and kind of in charge of using the revenue for players and stuff like that, they're going to be hired by the head coach. It's
Yeah.
almost backward, right? Like in the NFL, the general manager is hired by the president, and then the general manager has the ability to sign all the players and fire the head coach. In this scenario, I think most schools are going to be hiring their general manager from their head coach, and then it's actually going to be the athletic director that fires the head coach, the general manager will be gone, the entire staff will be gone. And so you fire a coach, it's not like you just like, oh, lost the head
Yeah,
coach,
it's
and
all
have the general manager hire a new one. Nope, you're firing the head coach and he's taking everybody with him.
yeah.
You gotta hire a new general manager, you gotta hire a new strength and conditioning coach, whole new staff. Like, how many buyouts do those staff members have? Like,
That's a really good point. Yeah, like the structure, and I think um, Cameron had mentioned like very happy we have Ross Bajork to lead us. I think people were upset about him coming in because he wasn't like a traditional athletic director. But I think that's a really insightful thought. Ross is much more in the mold of a guy who is like he is a bit more general manager ish
right.
in terms of how he thinks about finances, how he thinks about constructing a staff. So I, but I think you're right. I think the way we're imposing NFL like structures on the college game is going to have impacts behind the scenes that we did not think about initially.
And that's why, like, I know a lot of people hate it, but I'm almost for some of these, like, 70-35 team leagues in college football instead of the big, huge 134, FBS, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the 134 FBS, but Kent State is not going to be able to operate
Mm-hmm.
the same way that Ohio State can, right? Like, it's just, they can't operate that same way.
There's our one Kent State
Yeah,
reference
yeah. Where's
for
John
today.
Jacobs when we need
Yeah.
him? But yeah. So, unless you have any other thoughts, I think I'm good with leaving the conversation there.
Yep. I think this is a good pause button for now.
All right. We will revisit hot seat and stuff like that again. I'm sure probably around bowl time and see what people are thinking, and I'm sure there will be some firings, maybe one or two, and we'll talk about head coaches and stuff like that when that happens. But for
Mm-hmm.
now, we are going to leave the conversation there. This is a good thought by Cameron. He says G5 needs their own tournament like the NIT. I wouldn't hate it. I would watch. I would watch the heck out of a G5 tournament. That would be awesome
Yeah.
to see.
That'd be pretty fantastic, actually.
That would be like what a college football playoff would have been years ago, right? Like,
Yep.
anyway,
Let's
sorry,
do
we don't
it.
want to get on this subject.